Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's instant reaction to the NFC Championship game in which the Seattle Seahawks triumphed over the Los Angeles Rams in a much more dramatic game, Brian, than the AFC Championship game that preceded it. Or if not more dramatic, at least there was more incident and more offense to discuss and plenty of drama back and forth in this game. It was a worthy game of separating the top two seeds in the NFC and deciding which team would go to the Super Bowl. Vindication for Sam Darnold. A lot of questions to answer, I would suggest, for Sean McVay, for Matthew Stafford and that LA Rams team, who were very much in the win now window. And boy, did they look at times like they were going to win now, but they didn't. And it's Seattle who deservedly go to Levi Stadium to represent the NFC in 2 weeks' time.
This was a fantastic game, Conor. It was compelling from minute one to the very last second, where it literally came down to the very end. Unfortunately, I think with the AFC title game, I think the weather took hold of that game and we didn't really get the game which we envisaged over the course of the week, and it was unfortunate. But what we did get in the NFC Championship game was a game which lived up to the hype, it lived up to the expectation, it lived up to essentially what we've seen between these two teams over the course of the season. They even put up a graphic up on the screen during the Fox coverage last night about the points difference between the two games, the yardage between the two games, the touchdown scored. It was literally neck and neck, and this game kind of played out in that similar manner. Seahawks got out early. Looked like they were kind of getting a grip of the game. Rams, being the Rams, came back, put themselves in a position where it looked like they were controlling the first half. There was a killer drive before half time where JSN gets the touchdown. You have to question our player, their number one receiver. He's already one of the best receivers in the league. Finds himself open twice on the same drive for a touchdown. That was a killer drive before half time. But the Rams still battled hard. But ultimately, I think the Seahawks deserved it. I think I was opposed to them, but I could see why they would win it, and it could have played out that like that.
I was surprised when we saw that deep shot to Jackson Smith-Njigba, just how smooth and unimpeded Sam Darnold looked. We'd actually talked about it in the run-up to the game, how the injury was clearly hampering him and how they haven't been anything like as explosive an offense because they just haven't been able to, because they couldn't trust, and Sam Darnold couldn't trust himself to be heaving the ball downfield. But there was no ill effects from what we could see yesterday. I thought that was the big thing for me in a game in which their running attack wasn't at the level that it was before Charbonnet got injured, and Halani did some bits and pieces, some good, some bad. Thought overall he had a positive impact on the game, but he's not Zach Charbonnet, and the Seahawks had to find different ways to win. For me, this game was characterized by just how varied Seattle's offense can actually be when it needs to be, and we've given a lot of credit to the Rams for precisely that quality that they have lots of different ways that they can go and take you apart, and they showed that again last night, and we can talk about them in a little bit. I'm just very impressed by the whole of this Seattle operation. I'm sure you saw the Instagram clip that the Seahawks put up of Mike Macdonald taking the team when he took over last year and showing them a video of a rainy Lumen Field and saying, this is raining in January, playoffs, shitty for them, but great for us. This is where we want to be. This is what we want to be doing. We want to be playing here for the right to go to a Super Bowl. That's the goal. That's the vision. Took him a year longer than he said in that meeting, but he's there now. And on both sides of the ball, I'm just hugely impressed by how the Seahawks coped with adversity, how they pretty much answered all of the questions that we might have had about them. And not that we had that many, because to me, I said it when we were previewing the game, these are the two best teams in the league. And the Seahawks, I thought, arguably were the most complete team in the league in terms of not only the talent that they have in the coaching, but how they've been playing. They've been closer to their best level than pretty much any other team in the NFL. I think they're deservedly in the Super Bowl. And we saw great evidence of that last night. Not that everything went right, and not that they didn't make mistakes, and not that they don't have flaws, but it's the way in which they overcame them. And I was thinking of one sequence of play where they had a missed opportunity where it was actually Halani on the check down who had open turf in front of them and could have gone for a big game. They end up having to punt the ball back to the Rams. The Rams come down the field. They kick the go-ahead score. They're 13-10 up going into halftime, when the Seahawks might have thought that they'd drive down the field and take the lead before halftime. But the Seahawks then engineer a touchdown drive, and Darnold showing no ill effects, and Halani, who got a couple of handles on that drive and had a reception as well. And I love that they went back to him, having had that costly drop on the previous sequence. They're a team that trusts themselves, that trusts their process, and trusts that even if they get backed into a corner, they can come out swinging. I mean, one of the big questions I had for them was, well, if they get behind, if they get into a situation where their defense can't hold them in and they're going to have to throw the ball, can they do that? Like, can they win from behind, and can they win throwing the ball? And they absolutely answered that question against the second best team in the NFL.
Yeah, and the Sam Darnold was cleared of any injury during the week, so I felt that was a decisive factor. We know we are actually going to see a team that will be able to open up the playbook more. He's comfortable. He seems like he's fully fit, and that was recognised in his performance last night. And the smoothness, the calmness. I think we can start to move away from this kind of notion that Sam Darnold can't do it in big games. Obviously, it's easy to say that now as they prepare themselves for a Super Bowl in a fortnight's time, but it was more about how this team went into the playoffs and the trust factor that they had for him. And even last week, to a certain extent, he was carrying the injury. They managed that situation better than other teams can manage it in the league in terms of, right, we'll construct we'll construct a scheme and a game plan to make sure we get over the line here, knowing that by Sunday week in the NFC Championship game, he'll be fully in line and back 100%. You're right, you touched on there. This team have kind of dealt with adversity over the course of the season in certain points, and they've lost particular games where it looked like they may have got over the line, or even recall that big game we spoke about time and time again earlier in the season against the Bucks, where it was just back and forth, back and forth. They came out the wrong side of it. Some teams would say, "Oh, that was a great performance," but unfortunately, we're not at that level yet where we just can't seem to get over the line. Well, they very much got over the line now, and they're beating the Rams twice in new spots over the course of the season. When the Rams beat them in that game earlier on the season, it was hard to judge that game because they had a chance to win at the end, but yet they gave 4 or 5 turnovers, and you wonder whether the Rams were on an off day. But they've beaten the Rams on that Thursday night. Now they've beaten the Rams again. And there was crucial moments in the game that have gone against them. We touched on it briefly before we start recording here around the fact that in a moment, in a huge environment, and the crowd are behind you, that you have a 4th and 12, and you get the Rams off the field, and they give up a needless flag for taunting. There's an immediate touchdown off the next play. And in those situations, other teams might have cracked. So their defensive coordinator might have cracked. They might have taken that player off the field. They didn't. They trust him. They put him back in there. And they've come out the right side of it. But we're very fortunate. We're going to be there in 2 weeks. And I think at the start of the season, this wasn't a game which we ever envisaged being the Super Bowl. But at the same time, I think we're in for a treat. I would say, no, I did pick the Patriots and the Seahawks to go to the playoffs, Conor. That's as much as I can say on that side of things. But I think we're going to be spoiled. We're in for a great game in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think so too. And look, none of the players who were involved 11 years ago with the famous should have handled it to Marshawn Lynch passing the goal line, Malcolm Butler interception game, and a dramatic finish to that one. None of the players are involved, but it's still a rivalry that has played out on the biggest stage of the ball, and it'll be great to see whether it's the Seahawks who gain revenge or whether the Patriots actually holds the Indian sign over them and can get the result in that one. But as you said, this was a game which could have really boiled down to one massive mistake on either side. There's the muffed punt from the Rams, which sets up a touchdown for the Seahawks when the Rams would have had the ball back. And there's that taunting penalty, which in many ways was actually probably the harder one. I was thinking, which of those is the bigger dagger? And in many ways, for me, it was the taunting penalty because it's such a self-own and it's so destructive. You know, you could see how Tariq Woolen was being greeted on the sideline by his own teammate. They literally have that WTF expression on all their faces. Like you've just turned what could have been a great play into a double negative, because not only does he give up the taunting penalty to set up first down, but then he gets burned on coverage for the touchdown where Sean McVay does exactly the right thing as any play caller does. You got a guy who's scrambled and who's just blown his top, throw right back at him and put him in the blender for a second time. And that's exactly what they did. And yet the Seahawks managed to shake that off. Again, for me, a game defined by how well they answered all the questions asked of them. This defense, on a day where they couldn't, for the most part, get stops on the Rams, when they're backed up on their own goal line, and the decision as to whether to go for it on 4th down is another one that can be debated back and forth. Should McVay have kicked the field goal? I think the answer is no, because I think you couldn't guarantee that the Rams would have been able to stop the Seahawks, in that they were having just as much trouble defensively as the Seahawks, where I think they were probably right to go for it on 4th down. But what a stand by the Seahawks to turn them back and to go down the field. And I was particularly impressed on the next drive. They didn't do what a lot of teams would have done, which is just keep running the ball, bleed the clock, and punt the ball back to the Rams if you don't get the first down. They actually went to get the first down and kill the game. And by the time they ended up getting stopped and having to punt the ball back, there was only 25 seconds, and they'd bled all of the timeouts away from the Rams. And really, even Matthew Stafford couldn't engineer something from that far back with that little time on the clock. Job brilliantly done in the end.
Yeah, and that drive for me is kind of more impressive about Sam Darnold, because once we talk about the big plays early on in the game and the touchdowns, he had a critical pass to Walker, and in fairness to Walker, he turned it into a great play, yards after catch. And then there was one on the sideline as well to JSN that essentially, I would say, put the game away, but they got the first down, a bit of breathing space. They had to, as I said, they bleed the clock from there. Like, they're huge moments, they're critical situations, and he's able to turn those passes and the calmness and the smoothness that you referred to earlier that's not the Sam Darnold of old. This is the Sam Darnold that's evolved over his career. Like we're 8 years into his career now. You think back to when he was selected by the Jets. I'm looking forward to Radio Row. We get an opportunity to speak to Conor Rogers because people joked last year about the Giants moving on from Saquon Barkley. Well, if Sam Darnold is to win the Super Bowl in 2 weeks and the Jets are still in that world of trying to find the quarterback, should they or did they jump too soon to move on?
I'll raise some questions that another franchise will be asking itself, and I wonder how Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, are feeling now. They had Sam Darnold in the building. In their infinite wisdom, they let him go because of his playoff meltdown last year, and they went with JJ McCarthy, and now they're watching the guy that they let walk out the door take a team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, other teams probably would have looked at that in terms of, okay, we've had 1 year, we've had a really strong season, it hasn't ended in the manner in which we hoped, but we still made the playoffs. We can build on this team. We can put more players and more weapons around a quarterback that's comfortable in this offense. Wasn't to be. They moved off because I suppose we're getting into a Vikings conversation more off-season talk, but they felt the need was to rely on the young quarterback, JJ McCarthy, who they'd selected first round the previous year. So, yeah, a lot of people will be looking at this, including the Carolina Panthers as well. They had their opportunity. It's amazing. Like sometimes you just have to find the right environment. He said it in his press conference, in his interview after the game on the field. He said, "I've never been around a bunch of players like that," which kind of reflects on what you said, Conor, around how this team is able to deal with situations throughout the course of the season. The togetherness that they have, but it's probably reflective in the togetherness that Mike Vrabel has built with the Patriots. That's why we're in for such a fantastic game. I know at the moment Quimby have the Seahawks as 4.5-point favourites. Like it just kind of shows it's so tight, and that line could potentially even come down by the time we get to 11:30 Irish time on Sunday week.
Yeah, this time in a week's time, we'll be probably packing our bags, just about ready to head to the airport to head over there. And as you said, we'll have a whole week of interviews and analysis and insight, and we'll have a lot of fun over there as well. I'm really looking forward to bringing people all of that coverage from Radio Row and indeed from the game itself. But one of the things that I'm reflecting on and I'm very intrigued by is how fashionable it has been in the NFL, and seeing my own team and do this, the Bears, and going for Ben Johnson to go for the offensive wunderkind. The two teams that are going to the Super Bowl are coached by defensive-minded head coaches in Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald. So make of that what you will, but sometimes good coaching is good coaching. It doesn't matter which side of the ball it comes from.
Yeah, it's also important that you put a great coaching staff around you, and that's what the Patriots and the Vikings have done. It's reflective as well as the fact that not necessarily the Patriots, but the coordinators in Seattle are kind of prime for positions. Prime for positions in the league and head coaches in terms of interviewing, as well as the Rams. Let's be fair, I'm sure that the defensive coordinator didn't get the job done last night, but another hot pot in the running for a sweepstakes, which is starting to limit as we get on. We'll probably get into more head coaching conversations, even in Radio Row when we catch up with some people. But yeah, the list of people is starting to diminish as these jobs get filled, including Mike McCarthy. We've got to get into that one. But big news of the weekend that he's gone to the Steelers.
Yeah, lots to talk about, as you say. Really excited to get over there and get in among it, but we'll have plenty of coverage in between then and now on the Irish NFL Show.